everyone. You're listening to Rules of the Game podcast, and I'm your illustrious host, Butch Porter. And with me is the almost as illustrious, I'd say equally illustrious, Chad Hamel with CoderSchool in Ashburn, Virginia. This is a special edition of our podcast. Number one, we're Zooming, but number two, it's an education-focused podcast. My job, as many of you know, is to help families with kids at home in the education world, K through 12, with their education. So we have a micro school in Ashburn, and we have other programs we're doing. But over the last year, I met this fella, Chad. I said fella. I don't say that a lot. I was just saying the other day how seldom I say the word fella. Apparently that's where I come from. People are supposed to say that. I grew up in Louisiana. But Chad Hamel is with us today with CoderSchool in Ashburn. Where are you from, Chad? Where'd you grow up? Are you a native?
I am from the great state of Oklahoma, and we
That's
also
right,
say
Oklahoma.
fella, and we also like the word. We like the word swell. How are you doing? I'm doing swell.
Swell? I'm doing swell. I'm absolutely doing swell. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I would never say that unless
I grew up
somebody
in
asked me.
Oklahoma.
That's right. So tell me, give me the skinny. You and I have talked a lot about, kind of why we take so much time out of our lives to help and educating children. Tell me a little bit about how CoderSchool came about.
It came about in several ways. Primarily, it was a pay it forward type stage of my life, and my wife Ellen runs it with me. We're both in medicine. Mine is primarily veterinary medicine, and Ellen is human medicine. So we sort of had an experience 6 years ago with our son, who was diagnosed prenatally with a intrahemispheric cyst, along with some cortical dysplasia, and some diminished from an image perspective is corpus callosum. So that sort of changed our life tremendously. So during that kind of scary time where you're sort of dealing with the issues related to your son prenatally, and there's a lot of unknowns, we had a lot of support from the medical community, but also from just parents that we never met. So reading blogs, reading folks who had been in our shoes before. And so that was a long sort of pathway, and we navigated that. And during that process, we realized that we really, once we survived this and we got back on our feet and kind of dealt with all that, that we really wanted to do something more from a community-based. Take one step back in the sense of we were both clinicians at a time. I was a small animal emergency vet, so sort of that was sort of a role where you had that tangible impact on a day-to-day basis. And Ellen too was a surgical nurse, and so we sort of were clinicians for a while, which means you had that impact. We both went in sort of, I went to the FDA, and Ellen went into more of a policy-based, got her MPH, and we moved into more of a, public, more population medicine, which means you still do have impact, but you don't have that sort of connect with your community and connect with the patient. And so we really wanted to try to give back that way as well. So those sort of were the driving factors. So, life goes on. Our son was born much healthier than they expected. He had a surgery at 3 months for hydrocephalus. We had found a doctor in Boston Children's who basically designed a procedure that didn't require any shunt or anything like that for hydrocephalus. He developed that doing mission work in Uganda, and we were able to find him, locate him, and he was able to do that same procedure for Cooper.
Sure.
So from there on out, Cooper's been great and healthy. From a physical standpoint, from a physiology standpoint, socially, he was a little bit behind. That was to be expected. And coding was something that really helped me as a kid.
How's that?
And I really enjoyed it.
How did coding
why is
help you
that?
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it was a logical. I enjoyed the logic. I enjoyed, my brother and I would spend. We had an old Texas Instrument, and we would spend hours, drinking Mountain Dew and coding till the late hours to get a very very basic response, and that was the language that we learned. Obviously, that's an old language now, BASIC, but it was something that we really, really enjoyed together. It was something that my brother was a little bit socially awkward, so that was something that we could do together, which was great. So I enjoyed that, and I coded for quite a bit until high school, and then I got distracted with sports and things like that. But it was always something I really enjoyed. And Ellen, too, understood the basis of coding and the logical thought process that goes along with that. We joke in medicine, or at least my joke in medicine, is that you can't call cancer acne and treat it effectively. The great thing about logic and about medicine is that it's concrete in that sense, where you have to deal with the issues at hand. And the same with computer coding, which means you have to get the code right to get it to run the way you want it to run. There's no talking your way around it. It's just a tangible thing. I mean, in this world, we just felt like that's a really great thing for kids to have. So, and it's something that we've enjoyed in our life, and it gives us some balance and some perspective as well. So that was sort of it was a long story, but that was the drive. It came from two places. One, we believe in the importance of coding and logical thinking and critical thinking, and what worked for me as a kid, and also for our son in kind of a personal pay it forward type situation. And coding he's really benefited from that. He loves it. I think my son's name is Cooper. He does about 2 hours of coding a day. He just on his own, and he just really enjoys it. And it's something that calms him. He likes it. He's creative, and he has to go through a process that that he can't just manipulate or anything like that. He's got to do what it takes to build what he wants to build. So.
While you're talking, I'm trying to think.
That's the overview of all of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the, what's different about where I spend a lot of my time. A lot of where I spend my time is things that have no answer, right? I mean, I spend my time talking about, the great ideas and helping kids learn how to deliberate and learn from each other and try to seek truth in the world, right? And so seeking truth is not always the same as logic, right? It's sometimes we don't know the answers. If we knew all these answers, then we wouldn't have to talk about it anymore. We could just punch up a computer program and it would solve all our problems for us, right? And not the way that works. But what's funny is that, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, because from my point of view, that sort of deliberative process of seeking truth and dialectic, if you will, has not really been taught very well in public schools. But my impression is that logic and reasoning and that sort of garbage in, garbage out processing also hasn't been taught very well in schools. So where do you think the educational and disclaimer, I don't blame anybody. We both know plenty of teachers that are working really hard and trying their best, and administrators that are doing the same. But obviously, there's some things that are missing. So what do you think? Where do you think it kind of breaks down in the modern school system that makes it necessary for folks like you and me to intervene?
Well, I think computer science is still not broadly, from my perspective, computer is not broadly taught or broadly,
really?
thought about. There's still a relatively low amount of people who code, who understand the logistics and why. It's more, what we would call front end versus back end. So people know how to use technology, they know how to use their apps. They utilize it, but it's kind of like driving your car, but then not understanding sort of how to fix your engine, change your oil, those kind of things as well. And that's kind of what kind kind of what that we're trying to teach as well, is that there's a lot of reasons from an application standpoint, from a future vocational standpoint, but you know, one of the philosophies of the Coder School that makes us different, and why I you know, chose the Coder School, was the why. So we teach the why, and that, I think that's important, you know, because we live in the data world where you're kind of, everywhere you go, you're just getting much more and more data, and you're just collecting data, and so you're basically just, you know, staying on that surface level because you don't have time or energy or whatever to process all that data. So what we try to do is give kids a personalized, you know, 1 or 2 hours, 2-to-1, 1-to-1 with somebody who can teach logic in a way that is interactive, you know, and also sort of really get to the why. So coding is sort of a language. So if you learn a language, it's kind of like, okay, I can do A, B, C, I can write something, but you also need to understand why you're writing it, or hopefully so. You know, a stream of consciousness is great, but in technical writing kind of thing, you really kind of want to understand why and how it works. And so I think the earlier you do that, the better it is. So it's okay to you know, use animal reference. You see a giraffe, you understand a giraffe, you see that it walks, you can process that as a giraffe, but you may not understand why and how it's doing any of those things. And so I think that's kind of where the basis is, whatever you're teaching, to really get an in-depth understanding. Because then, you know, from medicine or coding, you know, coding, there's so many languages being developed all the time that you really need to understand the basics so that you can apply it. It's kind of like when vet school, they teach you got to know normal before you can understand abnormal.
That's
so
right.
You really need a great foundation so you need a great foundation of education. So what we're trying to do with these younger kids, especially, is try to get them to focus on the foundational learning, the why. Because I think once you understand the why, then it's whatever language or whatever applications you want to do in the future, you're more capable of doing that and being creative and actually not just being, you know, actually taking computer science and doing something with it unique because you understand in depth how it works. So those are kind of the philosophies that we work. So I'm not necessarily critical. I think it's just it's a lot different. It's the same and it's a lot different. I mean, there's just, you know, you have, you know, everywhere we go now, you know, like one of the things that one of our Instagram posts basically says that your iPhone has more memory and more capacity than what it took to get to the moon. You know, so it's kind of, so I think any way we can supplement education, any way we can find ways to reach. Go ahead.
I think to your point that all that all that processing power in our pockets doesn't really teach us anything, though, right? It doesn't tell us it doesn't tell us what's right or wrong. It doesn't help us. I mean, you've heard my 4-step process to destroy human civilization, right? Have you heard me? I don't think I've shared.
I think I've heard
podcast. I don't think I've shared with my podcast listeners the 4-step process to destroy human civilization. So I think now is a good time to go through that. So first is you raise an entire generation of people who do not know how to think clearly for themselves. Step 1. Step 2, you give them all the information on the planet at the tip of their fingers. Step 2. Step 3 is raise another generation of kids who don't know how to interact and relate positively with a variety of people. And step 4, you give them the ability to communicate with the whole planet in 140 characters or less at the tip of their fingers. So check. Now, notwithstanding the really smart people who had to come up with, you know, the code and all that to make all that work, do you think there's what is the downside to that sort of hyper connected? I mean, we all know some of the more obvious ones, but from a coding point of view, from someone whose son, proudly codes 2 hours a day. My son proudly plays Minecraft way more than that every day. So, and some of that can be coding, right? If you're doing, what's it called, Redstone or whatever on Minecraft, I mean, that's a real thing. But what is the downside with kind of this increase of technology from your point of view?
Well, I think for one, it's speed. For example, I think we have a lot of kids in our school with autism and ADHD, and computers are a great tool to reach them, to get their attention because they move so fast. But then that's not necessarily a great thing. It depends on what they're getting exposed to during that time that's got their attention. So if it's something educational, gets them to think or ask them to why, I think that's an important tool, and where data and how fast a computer can move and deliver information is great. But it really depends on the content as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but why is faster worse for non-ADHD kids, or on the
I think
general, why is speed a bad thing?
Well, I think it's not necessarily, quantify it from a bad thing. I think it just doesn't allow you to really to think very long. It requires fast decisions. So I think that unfortunately that's kind of the way algorithms are designed as well. Depending if it's through commerce or through communication, they want it to be fast. They want to change the narrative because it doesn't give you a lot of time to ponder and to think. And so I think I spoke earlier about. I was always told as a kid growing up on a farm and growing up kind of in a slower pace that you think before you act. And unfortunately, if something's moving at you very fast, whether you're processing data, whether you're getting impacted by, all this information at one time, or being asked to respond very quickly because you have to, because things move so fast, I think that you lead to the erosion of the classical thought process, or logical thinking, critical thinking, because it's hard to critical think quickly. I was trained to do it in emergency situations, but still it's something that it takes time to really think things out and to really think and to get proper perspective. I think if you don't have time to think, if you don't have time to process, then you lead to some superficial thought and possibly a reaction that you may not like for yourself, or may not, defines you. And I think that's a scary thing that we could talk about in detail as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, how is it that you guys solve that problem?
Well, the CoderSchool, one of the reasons why we chose it, again, is that we believe in low ratios. So our classes are at the most, a class is 6-to-1, but our primary bread and butter is 2-to-1, which means, 2 kids, one instructor for an hour, and it's not script based. And what I mean by script based is a lot of coding, a lot of everything is based on a templated type of structure. So whereas you just basically follow along, it's kind of like, the old ad lib, or even just paint the dots, kind of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whereas what we do is we basically, ask the kid what they care about, what they're interested in, and then we build and teach based on their interest. But we are, during that process, while they're building something, they're being asked why. Why would you choose this action? Why would you choose this particular command? What are you trying to accomplish here? If you're building a game, you're dealing with physics as well. You're dealing with ways to design things. And so you need to think through those problems. And so what our instructors are doing is we're teaching the language. So we're teaching, let's just say, use a broad term, like we're teaching the English language or the Spanish language, but we're teaching it. We're teaching it a philosophy and a way to utilize that language to get what you want and create what you want and understand why you're doing it. So that's sort of what we focus on, and that's kind of the design. The founders of the CoderSchool, basically the premise is that they had kids in sort of the automated computer-based, script-based coding, and when they're both computer programmers, and then they would come back and ask, what are you learning? Why are you doing this? their kids had no idea why they were doing it. They were just doing it because the script told them to do it.
Can you give me
and I think that seems to be an issue.
Yeah, can you give me some sort of example, like how that, like if you can come up with one, like wrong way and the right
so
way.
it's just like if you're sure. So a script is basically, so you have a pre-programmed design that will give you a name, and so you basically would be like plagiarism. You know, that's big in coding. That's great. You use different commands that get you where you need to go. So basically, it's like reading a Robert Frost poem, and then not thinking about it, just copying it on a piece of paper.
Sure.
And you've created a great poem that you've copied.
So you're talking about an artist's approach to coding, right? In other words, taking the time to feel it and appreciate it and understand it and making it yours and really being involved in it personally, you know. So keep going though. I
would take like Ikea for example, not to dismiss Ikea or anything that you get for that you have instructions, pre-instructions, and you follow the instructions and you build whatever you've bought. That's sort of the basis of a lot of coding programs and a lot of education programs, is that you're just following this curriculum, the strict curriculum, where you're basically just going from
this is like
checking the boxes and you're building a degree or a certificate. Yep.
It's like the Lego movie, right? Yeah. You know, you have the people, where are the instructions? And you have the master builders who just, you know, they can sort of, but that takes time, right? It takes time and it takes people, right? And that kind of the point, the whole 2-to-1 thing is that it takes a human being to sort of walk someone through the whys and the wherefores. But keep going.
Yep. And because there's a lot of coding platforms available. So if you want to do that, we prefer that that's free. If you're going to pay for something, you want to pay for the expertise. Sure. You want to pay for that instruction, and you want, you know, to see those results. And so then, you know, we have what we call a learning tree. It's on our website. I don't have it with me right now, but basically it shows that we, you know, our philosophy is that we build that foundation of the tree, sort of the logical thinking, critical thinking, and then once you really have a really great foundation, then as you move up the tree, you can pick different types of languages or applications that, you know, whether you want data analysis or you want to do creative art or if you want to build video games, you just kind of go up that tree. But it all starts with a solid foundation. What we would probably say from the liberal arts, a classical education, a nice foundation. Or, you know, in medicine, you understand anatomy and physiology before you get into diseases and treatment and those kind of things as well. So the foundational learning is what we really focus on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you. So what is it if parents are just concerned that, you know, they're already going to do like 4 hours of Zoom calls? And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of Zoom calls. Like we're on one right now, but so families are like, you know, they're already going to do 4 hours of Zoom every day for their regular school. So why would I put them in a coding class? And hey, you can come on, man. You have to introduce yourself if you come on. Those are the rules.
This is Pierce. This is our 2 going on 3-year-old. So this is
Pierce
Hamel.
What are you doing?
Yes.
You're not going to talk to me?
I have tools.
He's got his tools.
You have tools.
Yeah, he talked to you.
Now,
he said tools.
Yeah, from what I've heard, you're out fixing the tractor occasionally, aren't you?
Yeah, you fix tractor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, it is not unheard of.
Yeah, he's big on that. He's big about it.
Yeah, it is not unheard of for my 4-year-old to join the podcast. We don't even bother editing that stuff out, man. Hey, so you were talking about how? Oh no, I was asking if parents are concerned about screen time, right? Which is a thing, right? And screen time is a thing. So, what are some of the things you guys are doing? I know you've formed some partnerships and you're doing some things to kind of round out the screen time. So what are you guys doing to make sure that it's just not, you know, in front of a computer all the time?
Well, I think that's I mean, not to be critical, but I think when you have 22 people, what we've learned with the Zoom and virtual environment is that anything greater than really 2 people is very difficult from an educational standpoint. So anything that we do online is 2 to 1 or 1 to 1. So that's going to be a much different experience than having, 22 first graders on a Zoom call together, hanging out for 2 hours. So that interaction. Secondly, coding for the most part.
I still can't even picture that. Like, I can't even get that. Yeah. I still can't even imagine how that will ever work. But whatever, knock yourselves out. But go ahead.
They'll be getting that personal attention. Yep. Yeah. So they'll be getting that personal attention, which is what we've seen a reasonable amount of growth during this time, because I think kids crave that sort of personal attention. They get the 1-on-1 to 2 to 1 instruction. And then coding is, you get a sudden response. It's a nice kind of A/B testing in the sense of they get instant feedback of what they're doing. And it's fun. I mean, you design a game, you're using your creativity, you're using, both sides of your brain, and you're really building something, and you're getting responses and positive feedback. So from that perspective, I think we're different, and I think a breath of fresh air from the current environment as it's going. So that is one. The other is that we are, as you said, my wife and I were both athletes in college as well. So we both try to find that sort of mind-body kind of component. So we do want our kids to be active and to be functioning. So we partnered with Loudon Volleyball, Loudon Soccer, Ion Evergreen Sports Complex, Little League Baseball. That's one thing we do, is try to support youth sports in our community. We do a lot of pay it forward. So those are things that we're, martial arts. Those are the things that we're trying to do. So basically, you buy a physical activity, you join a physical activity, and you get the CoderSchool as a bonus activity, something that they can do at night instead of playing video games or just watching, YouTube or whatever. They can actually be using their brain to build things, to interact, and to learn, and it's fun. We try to make it fun. I think, learning doesn't have to be drudgery.
Sure.
So that's the high level.
Yeah, I got you. Well, what else do I need to know, man? You, I know that you've mentioned that you kept your costs really reasonable. Not because you have Martian competitors or whatever that, come in and try to underprice you or anything like that, but because, you want to keep it rational.
Yeah.
So talk a bit about how, from a solution standpoint where everybody has access, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we because it's paid forward, because we believe in what we're doing and why it's important, we try to provide access points to wherever we can, and we try to, because we're personalized, because we're individualized, we try to meet the needs of a particular program, particular families. We just do what the kid needs, and I think that's important, as well as one of our philosophies is not every kid's different, not every family is different. So from the nuts and bolts of pretty much everything that we do, it's sort of based on the family and the child, and I think that's important.
Mean? Hang on just a second.
Everybody can do that.
I thought there was like a standard model kid, right? And so that most kids, you could just give them a standardized education and they will be fine. And it's only like special dumb kids or smart kids that you have to do something special for. No, actually that's our tagline, is that we haven't met a standard model kid yet. So we don't do standardized learning. Well, that's really good, man. I appreciate all that, and I hope we can talk again. I'm going to be talking to a martial arts school fairly soon, and we're going to talk to some music instructors, and so you're kind of kicking off like a series, and I'm looking forward to finding as many people in Loudoun County and the environs that are helping solve the challenge of K-12 education during pandemic, which we find ourselves in. So look, thanks again. And just tell us a little bit how to find you. CoderSchool Ashburn. Is there a website, or how's that work?
Yeah, you can just go to actually, it's just easy to go to the CoderSchool.com. You can go to that website and you can find
search
us
by
on the location. You can go to Ashburn at the CoderSchool.com. Yep. Or you can go to Ashburn at the CoderSchool.com and we'll pop up. You can just Google us and we're right there. So whatever is easy.
Yeah, we may do something crazy and put a link in the podcast episode or something weird like that, with a picture. It's possible.
That would be great.
I'm just saying that the technology is there where we're able. I mean, I've got enough computing power right here, more than Apollo 11. So I think we can pull it off. Dude, Chad, thanks a bunch. I really enjoyed it. We'll talk again, man. I think we need to catch up in a few months and talk again about what's going on and what's the newer trends and things like that. Is that cool with you?
Thank you, Butch. Thank you, Butch, for having us, having me, and we really appreciate what you guys do in the community as well. I think that sort of forged our relationship as well. So we really appreciate everything that you guys do as well. So thanks for having me, and have a great day.
All right. Well, if you're listening, then go have a conversation, but play by the rules. Thanks for tuning in.